wasn't the first one to do that though. That's why it fell off. Here's my $12 sander. I bought this sander at pawn site. It wasn't $12. I think I paid like $30, $35 for it. I bought this sandpaper, this almost $300 belt sander at pawn shop for 30 or 40 bucks. But it was missing a part right here, so I think it was $12 for the part that I bought. So you gotta get the deal on it. We still use it. It's got a belt on it. This belt right here goes around. There's a drive roller in the back, moves the belt, and you hold it down. What's the big disadvantage of this sander? It's heavy and it's loud. Oh my goodness, it takes a lot of energy to run it. But man, will it grind the surface flat for you. Pneumatic tools. What are pneumatic tools? Go. Air pressure. We use compressed air through in the hose. We plug it in the back here, and it fills this body up with air. Then when we pull the trigger, it uses a piston to drive a hammer that drives a fastener out the front of the tank. Comes in a dizzying array of different kinds of fasteners, staples. What we most commonly use are 1/4 inch narrow crown staples. What does that mean? Who wants to tackle 1/4 inch narrow crown? When you look at a staple has a crown. That's the part that if you drive a staple if you staple paper together, the bar that you see across the top of the front of the paper, that's the crown of the staple. The leg is what goes into the material. So the crown is 1/4 inch wide, 1/4 inch narrow crown. The legs of the stapler are 1/4 inch apart. We get into white now. This is a roofing stapler. The crown is 1 inch, much wider staple. They come in all kinds of different sizes and styles, all the way from, I think 1 inch is about as big as I've seen. I don't know how many people have seen the staples in a cardboard box. You get a cardboard box and the flaps are stapled together. How many people own a stapler that puts those staples in? Do you really? Cool. You're like the first person I've ever met that. I was at the pawn shop one day, $50 later, had a stapler, So I'm cool. I can make stuff out of cardboard. What? Quite a few actually. I've built quite a few cardboard boxes for custom applications. I mean, when I say quite a few, I mean a dozen or so. So it's super. I use it so rarely, but I mean, to buy one, they're like $300 or $400, and so I bought one for $50, and I've used it. I've gotten my $50 worth out of it. So it's a cool thing to have. I have so many tools on the shelf that are just they're only do a specific task. But man, when you need that tool, it really does solve the problem. I built a cardboard box for a custom-sized cardboard box for a collapsible rehearsal cube that I can ship around the country. Cardboard box for a never mind. I built nails. We don't really use that many nails in the shop. We mostly use staples in our shop, just because of the nature of the stuff that we do. But there's so many variations on what kind of what you can do with pneumatically driven stapler or fasteners. So, dizzying array. I probably have power tools, table saw. If Curtis can only have one power tool in the scene shop, what would it be? I can do everything with this saw. Now, granted, I can do something. There's other saws that I can do a better job with, but I can do so many different. I can do things with this saw that I can't do with most of the other saws, and I can do most of what I can do with the other saws with this saw. So that's why I prefer the table saw. This is a really nice saw. If you ever get a chance to buy a SawStop table saw, I strongly encourage you to buy a SawStop brand table saw. Why? Go.
Well, it won't stop it, but it'll retract.
It will keep you from cutting your fingers off. I have a friend of mine who SawStop came out on the market, and he was running a scene shop, and he said, hey, we should buy, he went to his boss and said, hey, we should buy one of these new table saws. And they said, how much do you need? He said, I need $5,000 to buy a table saw. I was like, I don't know. $5,000 is a lot of money. We'll think about it. 3 months later, carpenter in the scene shop on the old table saw shoved his hand in the table saw, cut off 3 fingers. Guess how much it cost to put those 3 fingers back on? Almost $40,000 was the hospital This was a decade ago now. So, very cheap investment compared to that injury. Now, you can make all kinds of arguments, pros and cons, but, and if you consider the cost of, that person has now, he was gonna go through the, now, they were able to go to the hospital, he cut just the baby end off one of his fingers and like totally cut the other two off. So they weren't able to fix that finger, but they were able to fix it, but not put the piece back on. And they were able to put both of his other fingers back together. And so he still has his whole hand. He's got a little nick off that one end there. But the rest of his life, he still has that injury. And so his hand still doesn't work the way it did from the factory. So if you get a chance to, it has a system in it that if it touches senses you touching it, it will stop the blade and pull the blade down below the table so that it won't actually, it'll cut you still, but it won't cut your finger, it'll stop. It won't make more than just a little nicking. Kind of expensive to set that system off and replace the blade and all the other things, but what it saves you is amazing. What we do with the table saw is it has a fence here, and so there's a blade sticking up below this guard right here. You put a piece of material in here and you slide it along the fence, and it makes a parallel shape. It makes a parallel cut in your material, parallel to the fence. There's many variations on what can go on, what can happen there, but that's primarily what it does. You set the fence at a distance, and then you push your material between the fence and the blade, and it makes it that size. Number one thing, when you're using a table saw, the number one thing to know, never relinquish control of a piece of material that is between the fence and the blade. Because what happens, this is the number one accident that happens with the blade, is there's a spinning blade in here, spinning towards you. You're pushing a piece of material through there, you let it go of it, it twists, and it binds up between the blade and the fence. And then and it doesn't give, because that blade's spinning, and it'll shoot that piece of material back at you. So, when you're pushing a piece of material through here, make sure you push it all the way past the blade before you let go of it. Because what happens is people push it up in there, and then it's finished the cut, because the cut is, the edge of the material, the trailing edge of the material is already past the front of the blade, and then they let go of it to turn the saw off or do something else. And then that's whenever they let go of it and it gets a hold of it. So always make sure you push the material all the way past the blade before you relinquish control of it. Miter saw. This has a spinning blade in it. You push it down through the material. It can do many things. This is a really great saw because it's so versatile. It has an adjustment out here so you can adjust the angle on it. So you can cut boards at an angle. You're going to use this saw to cut boards for your bench. Very versatile saw. Everyone should have one. How many does Curtis have?
Isn't this also a chop saw?
Sometimes it's referred to as a chop saw. I probably will call it a chop saw. It's actually a power miter saw, chop saw, because you chop the thing down through the board. This is the radial arm saw. These have lost a lot of popularity. They're kind of dangerous. They only really do one thing really well, which is make a perpendicular cut. Why does Curtis love this saw?
Because it can cut really wide boards.
But there's a limit. It makes really square cuts. You can adjust this. It has an adjustment here, so you can adjust it to cut angles. This saw does such a bad job of cutting angles because it's so finicky. You have to get it set. So changing the angle on the saw is kind of a pain in the butt, but it makes really great, really square cuts. The chop saw that we just looked at, the one thing about it is because it does so many different things, is that when you're cutting in that angle, if you push on the saw, you can change the angle of it by a half a degree or so, just by pushing on the saw in a funny angle. And so it's less precise than this saw. This saw here is going to cut a 90-degree angle every time, all the time, every time. That's why I love this saw. It's a big, heavy saw. It doesn't get pushed around or moved. It doesn't cut a funny angle on you. That's why I love this saw. It is a little dangerous. It does require more training and more skill to cut a board with this. And you're also going to use this to make your boards for your benches. So be ready. I mean, it's a great saw though. Fantastic saw. If I could buy a bigger version of this, this is a 12-inch version. They make them up to 16 inches. I'd really love a bigger one, but so yeah, this is great for us. We don't need a bigger one. Yeah. Drill press. This is our current drill press. We have a new one, a new older drill press that we've got that we haven't put in service yet. What do we use a drill press for? Drilling holes. Why do we use a drill press instead of just a drill? It's much more precise. We're gonna drive this drill bit. We're gonna put something here. We're gonna put a drill bit in the chuck here. We're gonna drive it down through there. You can drill. It's much more efficient to use from an operator standpoint, and you get a nice straight square cut or straight drill hole. You're not drilling at some funny angle because you just eyeball it. So really great drill press. Got some problems. Not my favorite, but it's really good drill press. And for drilling a lot of holes, a lot of repeatable holes. Bandsaw. But you can't really see in here. There's a big wheel in the top of it, and a big wheel in the bottom of it. And there's a bandsaw blade. It's a big long loop of teeth. And so whenever the motor spins, it's going around, coming down, pulling down through the blade, and it cuts. The advantage of this saw is you can cut curves and different things like that. The disadvantage is, no, there's many. There's pros and cons to every saw that you're going to use. But this one is, it's a big old saw that works really well, and you can cut curves with it. Belt disc sander. This end here is a disc of sandpaper, and this is a belt of sandpaper. And it has a shelf here, a cable, where you can put a piece of material down here and push it up against the sandpaper to shape it, to sand the edge off of it. Same thing on this end, only it's a disc. Why would you use the disc versus the belt? Depends on what you're trying to achieve. I like the disc end of it better, but the belt end does work, or works just as well, depending on what you're doing. You can put a larger, flatter surface against that one. It's just a stationary piece of spinning or moving sandpaper to sand the edge of something. Spindle sander. If you ever get the opportunity to buy a jet model, whatever spindle sander is, don't. This has been a very large disappointment for me. It's got a spindle that sticks up. It's got round pieces of round tubes of sandpaper you put on it, and it spins, and so you get sand the inside of the shape. From the day we bought this thing, it has not been straight. So the thing is spinning at a slight oscillation. And so it's really hard to get a nice smooth cut out of the thing, if you will. And so, pretty disappointed with this one. But we still have it, we still use it because, it does a thing that we can't do with all the other stuff that we have. If you walked in my shop and said, what's the first tool you would replace, this would be it. Spindle sanders are amazing. They do a task. They can sand the inside of a curve like nothing else. But to get a really good one, you have to spend a lot of money. And that's one of the problems with this one is a lower end thing. And I tried to fix it a couple of times, and I've just never been successful. There's a lot of words I can't see them. But not really. There's so much out there no one can ever learn it all. Keep this in mind though. Knowledge is power. Never stop seeking your knowledge. Take comfort in the fact that you don't need to learn all of everything. Okay? What time is it? How did I do on time? Did I run out of slides?